Well, hello, beautiful people, on a very beautiful Sunday. Oh my gosh, it's been a glorious day. I'm Lisa Murray from Creative Alchemy, and I thought we would have a very, very different conversation today. And this came from all of the requests when I wrote this morning. I'm going to do a Facebook Live later, all of the different requests that people made. And so I want to thank everyone who made suggestions, and I'm going to just weave my way through this conversation about honoring your truest choices. Now, what does that even mean? Well, hi everyone who's joining. Thanks for coming to play. I love it when you say hello because then I actually see that you're there because Facebook does not always show you. It's really annoying. Okay, so yeah, what are we going to talk about? So where will more to the point, where will I start? So what I wanted to talk about was knowing what will create your greatest future, being in the flow, and then making choices that honor who you are now and who you're going to be in the future. Because what happens, I think, is that and all of this, all of those things actually come back to, do we trust our awareness or do we doubt it? Okay. And what I notice, well, that's okay. It comes back to two things. I'm going to change my mind on that. We trust our awareness and we doubt it, or do we honor ourselves or do we put everybody else first? Because basically, if you sort out those two things, what shows up is this really amazing magic where you're so very clear about what actually you need to choose, about what is going to create greatest in the future. Okay, now I'm going to probably be going weird every now and then. There's so many mozzies here, and I've got mozzie calls on, and there's still so many mozzies. I'm in the country at the moment. It's really marvelous. I've got two beautiful horses to look after, two amazing dogs, and three chickens. And I've met just about the entire neighborhood. It's been really fun. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, actually, because I had a really interesting experience today. Okay, let me just see where I'm going to start. And if you've got any questions about this topic, throw it in the chat, because literally at the moment there is so much information that I'm like, where do I even start in terms of unraveling it all? So let's just see. So let me just talk to you about a story. I like to start with a story because then it's easier to lead in. So I went to dinner at the neighbours on Friday night because they invited me. I'm at a house sit, and honestly, they're the loveliest people all around here, really friendly. And I met quite a few of the other neighbours. And one of the ladies, she starts talking about a book, and I said, oh yeah, Charles Massey wrote that book, and it's basically about being a guardian and a caretaker of the land that we have. And it's a really amazing book. I haven't read all of it yet, but it's been in my bookshelf for quite a while. And it was fascinating because it's not really a very commonly known book, you know. So we were chatting about this, and she goes, yeah, you know, I always feel like there's indigenous spirits on my land, and, you know, do you know anything about it? And so I ended up having this really quite extraordinary conversation with all the people at the dinner party about energy and about, you know, the spirit of the land and the spirit of the indigenous people and how we can connect with that and how we can honor that. And all sorts of different things. And it was great. And these are people that really haven't had a lot to do with energy. So they were really open-minded, and it was really very interesting. She said, would you come over to my house and, you know, see what you can pick up? And I was very curious. And for me, so this is the honoring, this is the trusting yourself and honoring your choices bit. I could feel it in my body that there was something in it, that I needed to go there, right? Now, sometimes that would be something I would charge for as part of my business. But this time I really felt, no, I'm just going to go there for afternoon tea like she invited me and just open the doors and see what happens. And very interestingly, opening the doors was exactly what happened, because she knew exactly where on her land the energy was. And hi to everyone who's joining. So nice to see you all. And there's three trees that were lined up in a row, three really big, big old trees. And so we had this fascinating conversation with the trees, with the land, with the spirits, all sorts of things. And her partner actually is quite aware of all of this, but he didn't really have many words for it. So what I did was I gave them some very simple processes that they could start with, and then, of course, a bit of language around it. And so what happens is that I was aware that it would create a greater future if I just popped around there for a little while for an afternoon tea. I just knew it would, right? And if you were to ask me, well, how did I know that? It was a sense in my body. It was something where my body was like, you know, this is the thing you need to do. Now, before I went, I pulled a dragon card out, and the message was very much, it was so totally bang on. It was just amazing. It was all connected with the earth and the creation of the earth, and it was very beautiful. So I sent it to this lady afterwards, and she's like, I think we've met before. And I'm like, yeah, we have, but not in this life, So all of this is about actually knowing that that was my truest choice in that moment. Okay, that literally that was what was available to me. Now, I could have done other things this afternoon. There's a whole lot of other things I could have done, but that was the choice that was truest to what I would like to create in the world. Okay, so part of this whole conversation is about knowing, and when I say knowing what you'd like to create, it doesn't have to be a strategic plan kind of knowing. It doesn't have to be, some really detailed idea. It's an energy of what would be more generative. And one of the things, I read very recently that Queensland has one of the highest rates of tree felling in the world. And I was just quite disappointed and quite horrified by that, actually, because I would have thought in Australia we might know a little bit better than that. So our deforestation is huge. And so I talked to this lady about being a steward of the land energetically as well. And it was just a very marvelous afternoon. So this was an honoring of me. It was an honoring of her and her awareness. And it was a creation for the future, for the land, for everything. Okay. So how often are you willing to make those choices, or do you sit in doubt, or do you go, oh, only if they pay me, or, and like, I do want to say, it doesn't mean I do everything for free, because I don't. I mean, we all need to eat. We all need to have money, and, but it's this thing of knowing when it's the right choice to just do it because there's an energy there. And I also received quite a lot from that, actually, because when I stood between two of the trees, it was so and they were quite close together. Like, these trees were, I would not be able to wrap my arms around half of them. They are big trees, and two of them were less than a meter apart. And I stood between them, and I could just feel all the healing energy and all the magic. And that was just an incredible experience for me. And I got that I received something from this as well. So we don't always get paid in money. Okay, we get paid in many, many different ways. So what I'd like to say to you is, and I'm going to go back to the questions people ask, because I know they maybe weren't asking from this particular direction, but I just wanted to start you with a sense of what this can look like when all those pieces come together. Now, I know Olga asked about which direction. So what I want to do is talk about, so this lady that I met, now she knows there's a new direction coming for her, but she did not know where to start. She's like, I just don't know. I'm going and I'm doing courses that interest me, and I'm doing different things, but what is this? What am I dealing with here? And I said to her, you're going to find out choice by choice by choice. Now, a lot of us want the answer before we start. And what that does, if you demand for it to be like that, is it means you never start. It means that you never get to learn to trust yourself in the process. Okay? And yeah, Lee, exactly, about getting paid energetically all the time through different means. It's amazing how it happens, and it was a really beautiful experience being there. I'm so grateful I did it. And so what I want to say is that if you won't make the first choices, then the universe won't trust you with the next 10. Because it's going to say, well, she won't make those ones. Why would she make these other ones? So therefore, why would we give her those other ones now? We need to give her the ones that she needs to be willing to take. Okay. And I've seen this over and over and over and over in my own life. It's like, if I had the courage to take the next step, then the universe would give me that something so much more. And that would create the flow. Okay, because some of you want to know, well, how does the flow? How do you get into the flow? It comes from making the choices and trusting yourself. Now, it doesn't mean you'd get it all right, okay? Sometimes it's just, oh, well, that was an interesting learning experience. The first farm I ever looked after when I was house sitting, that was an interesting experience. That one I probably wouldn't want to repeat because it wasn't for me, my style. There was not a lot of joy in that one. There's some interesting experiences, which I'm grateful for, but overall, it wasn't the thing. So then I learned I had to ask more questions. So sometimes our choices are showing us which questions we need to ask next time, okay? Because we like to think we're really, really, really smart, and sometimes we are, and sometimes we're not. So, um, so for anyone who's like, what am I supposed to do with my life? What am I, which direction should I be going in? You need to start by choosing something. And what I would do is choose the thing that either feels the most fun or the most expansive or the most joyful, okay? Because that's going to be taking you in a direction that aligns with who you are in some way. Okay, that's that bit. So then, let's see. We've talked a little bit about connection and flow, and if anyone's got any questions, throw them in the ring. And Julie, actually, when she asked about connection and flow, she also was talking about harmony and rhythm, and all of these things go together. Because what I saw with those trees, for example, there are these three big trees. They were creating the harmony and rhythm for miles around, and it was to perceive that going on, to perceive the guardianship and the healing that they were offering. To me, it was no surprise that there's a very close-knit community here, actually, because that was the same energy that was in the trees. And so we often, what am I going to say? We have everything we need. Okay, and some of you are going, but I don't have blah, blah, blah. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I don't have blah, blah. And it's a truth with a lie attached. It might not look like you have enough on the surface, but if you dig deep enough, you're going to find you've got exactly everything you need right now. And what I notice is that when we dive into these things, we are given more, basically. So that connection and that flow continues as we keep saying yes. It's literally the more we say yes to the universe, the more the universe says yes to us. Now, Laura Lee is asking, how do you really know what is your true direction? I think the short answer to that is there's no one true direction, okay? What there is you have a collection of magical talents and abilities that you can bring to, that you have brought, that you came in with to this planet so that you could make a difference. And it really is your choice what difference you make, okay? Now, you probably don't want to hear that because you're like, well, but I want to know the answer. And it comes back to what I was saying in the beginning about you've got to keep choosing and watch what those choices create. Look for the patterns. Because what I know in pretty much anyone I've ever coached around this, when we look at the patterns of their life, there is always things that show the directions. Even for me, and sometimes you're blind to it because it's you and you're in the midst of it and you can't see the wood for the trees, basically. But what I do know is there are so many choices. Like the lady that I was talking to today, she, even as a child, she was telling me things about how she was as a child. And I'm like, yeah, see, there you have it. She was already making the choices that were connected with what she's going to do now. And she would probably be in her 50s now, I'm guessing, or close enough there too. So you actually know, okay? You already know. And it's just that we allow a lot of surface level distractions to get in the way. So if you were to do a little treasure map of everything that you have ever, everything that ever felt important in your life or that made a big impact on you or where you felt you really made a difference, do a treasure map of things that have some energy, have some resonance to them, and just start to look for the patterns. And I think you might be surprised at how easy it is to sort of get a sense of where to start choosing, in what direction you might make your choices. Now, Joanna wanted to know about the difference between having consequences and being aware of what choices are creating. Now, this is a really great question and a very fun one because we all want a guarantee, okay? And when you're saying your true direction, Laura, I get that there's a little bit of a where's the guarantee, okay? And we all do want a true direction, a guarantee, because of course that would give us or put us completely in our comfort zones, which is where we love to be. But the thing is, we didn't come here to be in our comfort zones because we've done that many lifetimes, and this is not the lifetime for that. Have you noticed how fast the world is changing, right? So we didn't come here to sit in our comfort zones. Doesn't mean we have to be uncomfortable all the time, but it does mean that we need to be willing to explore beyond the known, okay? And so as far as consequences go, It's a very interesting question, because to me, the difference is if I have a conclusion in my choice, so if I've decided that my choice is going to create a specific thing, then there's probably going to be some consequences that were unintended, you know? And I would say, like, for example, you know, my crazy ex, that was one of those. Too many conclusions in there, and what a mess that made, right? So that's where there's, you know, your conclusions can actually send you down the garden path in a way that you didn't mean to go. But the awareness of what your choices are going to create isn't so much a what as an energy, okay? Because I don't really know what it was that was going to be created by going there today, but I knew to go there, okay? It was so clear to me that I needed to go there, and that it needed to be today, and it needed to be at 2 o'clock. Now, why? I have no idea at all. All I know is that was what was required, okay? And so I did it. And I don't really have a point of view about that stuff. When it shows up that clearly, I'm just like, okay, sure, I'll do it. Now, when I have my head in the game, and what I mean by that is when I'm overthinking it, when I'm trying to work it out, and I said to this lady, I said, you know, when you go and sit between those trees, put your head inside, or something, like, you know, do it from your heart space, do it from your body and your being and your sensory perception, because she's also a very good thinker. And what I would say is basically anytime your head is involved in this equation, then you are limiting the possibilities. And so you're limiting the choices that are available. All right. Whereas if you just go with the flow, like I've just been saying yes to the very kind invitations people have been giving me here. You know, the other day, one of the neighbors said, can I mow your lawn? I was like, yes, that would be lovely. Thank you. And I'm really grateful because I hate mowing. So it's always about for me, a lot of things with choices are about opening doors and actually allowing doors to open in such a way that you don't have to define the outcomes, but you can receive what comes from opening those doors. Okay, so that's a very different thing to consequences. So consequences occur when we are so fixated on a particular way or target that we won't listen to the prompts, that, as Lynn has just called it, we won't listen to the energy, we won't actually be open to the possibilities. So for example, if I had a point of view that I must get paid for every time I'm giving my awareness to someone, then I would never have gone there today. And I feel like that would have been a great disservice for the land for many, many, many miles around, like maybe 50 or 100 miles around. Because where they are, you can literally see to the Glasshouse Mountains and beyond and out to the ocean, and it's just incredible. And I asked this lady to expand her awareness to all of that land, because I know by her doing that, something different will be created. So can you see how you have to be open to the possibility in the moment? No one can tell you. And all of this is designed to make you trust yourself, to actually have you trust yourself so strongly that you know that it doesn't matter what choice you make, you will be able to bring an honoring of you, an honoring of the other people involved, and an honoring of the earth we live on to the party. Okay? So it's a really interesting thing. And I always love it when I say, what do you want me to talk about? And people give me all different topics, because I always know that they weave together. And so, you know, Cass asked about the self-honoring, and everything I've just been describing is about that. And it's also about honoring the people around you and the land around you, and honoring your awareness rather than dishonoring it by ignoring it, basically. Because we're really good at ignoring our awareness and then wondering why there's consequences. You know, you want me to tie it all up in a neat little package for you? Here it is. But it's literally like there is so often when we dishonor what we're aware of, and then we wonder, why did that bad thing happen to us? Well, it happened because we dishonored ourselves, basically. Or, you know, why didn't that amazing thing happen? It didn't happen because we weren't honoring enough to receive it. And that's a very simple kind of, you know, in some ways it is a simplistic view, but in another way, probably 80 to 90% of everything that you choose works like that. So I think the invitation today is to look at, well, you know, how would you like to honor yourself in the choices that you're making? And it's interesting, in Glow Wild this month, it's the Living as an Experiment month, and I've really chosen self-honoring as my experiment for the month, because I see how often I almost go to the edge of something really amazing and then I pull myself back. And I wanted to track it this month and see, well, actually, how much am I doing that, and what's going on when I do that? And it's been really interesting, because I've noticed a lot of, when I actually track it, I'm much happier to go, oh, I'm going to do that now, rather than, oh, I'll do it later, because I'm realizing how much later is a dishonoring of myself, if that makes sense. So there's many, many ways we dishonor ourselves. And what I would say to you is that it's not about trying to be perfect or trying to get it right. It's about how many choices can you make in a day that do honor you, and just keep expanding that, because that's actually where the magic comes, and where you get to, oh yeah, what would I say about that? When you get to that space where you really honor yourself, a lot of things can show up that wouldn't show up or couldn't show up otherwise. And like, as Suzanne's just said, when you honor yourself, you're always taken care of. Look, I'm not sure about always and never, actually. Those two words for me, because there are anomalies, there are little blips in the universe where somehow it just didn't come together. But what I would say is that when you honor yourself, you always have the capacity to take care of yourself, even if it doesn't work out how you imagine, even if it's not quite what you desire it to be. I know that there's, what you've done is, by honoring yourself constantly, you build up this sort of resilience and a reservoir, I can't say the word, reservoir of energy that allows you to have your own back when things go a bit pear-shaped. Yeah. So yeah, Mats, and all those things Mats has just written there about the synergy of possibilities and being authentic and being all of that. Yeah, it's totally all of that. And yeah, so this is really a thing that you need to experiment with for yourself. And, you know, in Glow Wild, we've gone deep into the hows and whys and wheres of experimentation, and how you can do that to actually move yourself forward quite dynamically. Because what I see is, when we honor our truest choices, it's literally like the streets become paved with gold. You know, like I just see so much magic emerge when I'm in that space, and when I'm really present with the choices that I'm making, rather than trying to do 1,000 other things. You know, I think we mistake busyness for self-honoring. I think there's a lot of confusion there. It's like, if I do enough, I'll be worthy. When really it's like, if I honor myself enough, I will know my worth. That's the distinction that I would make with those. So, all right, has anyone got any questions? Any requests? Anything else you want me to talk about in relation to this? If so, now's the time, because we're going to finish up pretty shortly. And if you do want to join Glow Wild, it is still open until we do the very first call, which I think is in a few days. I need to check my diary on that, but it's not very far away now. So it's very exciting. We're having a lot of fun, and there's lots of aha moments emerging, because I think self-honoring is one of the most difficult things to do in the current societies that we live in. You know, so much is about, you've got to put everybody else first. And it's not about dishonoring other people. Honoring you does not mean you dishonor other people, okay? It's more about knowing what will work for you, and knowing what will create for the greatest for everyone. And, you know, another lady, one of the other neighbors, came with me today to the neighbors with the beautiful property. And yeah, Colleen, everyone does need a cheerleader. Absolutely. And, you know, it's a really interesting thing, because what I know, okay, sorry, I'm talking like 3 conversations at once in my head now. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. Let me, which way am I going to go? Okay, my other neighbor came, the lady that invited me to dinner. Now, she doesn't know much about energy at all, but she said to me in the car on the way home, do you think I could do this? And she was really wanting to know, could she be intuitive? Could she actually get a sense of this? And I was like, yeah, everyone has this. Everyone has it, and it's just practice. And we had a really lovely conversation about it. And I said, well, come in with Morning Tea next week and we'll talk about it a bit more. Because my sense is that imagine if every person who owned land was willing to honor the land in the way I've been talking about today. Imagine what difference that would make. Now, we were talking about they've got an ant problem, and there was like this whole thing with pesticides conversation going on. And I was like, well, you know, is that honoring of the land? And it was very interesting because I could tell this lady was taking it in. I wasn't making her wrong. I was just literally opening up the conversation in a way that would possibly be more honoring of everyone and everything. Okay? And so there's a real magic that comes when we get together and when we open up conversations with each other that allow new awareness to emerge. And so, Colleen, going back what you were saying about strength in numbers and everyone needs a cheerleader, this is why I created Glow Wild. Not because I don't think people can actually have awareness by themselves, they totally can, but because together we have conversations and we have a bigger generative energy together that actually creates more. You know, and I was really willing for the lady to come today, and even though I knew she may not even know what I was talking about, because I knew that if she was asking, there was a spark of something possible there. Okay, and this is about being inclusive. And I think too often we're like, oh, that person doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to include them. Whereas more and more I'm seeing there's a real gift in being inclusive. So there you go. And yeah, compliment always beats compromise, Mats, totally. And it's literally like, you know, we're all very powerful, potent beings, and we underestimate the difference we can make in everyday conversations. And so part of what I'd like to invite you to today is just to start looking at that and asking, well, is it honoring of me if I don't show who I am to the world? Is it honoring of me if I don't allow those conversations to emerge? Because so often, you know, when I was younger, I didn't like talking to people. I know it's hard to believe now, but it's true. I just didn't. I didn't like talking to people. And I think part of that was I had no sense of who I was, and so therefore I found it excruciating to try and express what I knew most people couldn't hear. But over the years, I've become better and better at being aware of how I can explain things simply, how I can bring things into a conversation that will just put people in the question a little bit or allow them to actually know something different. So that's a very all over the place roundabout conversation. I hope you've enjoyed my example though, because I had a lovely time today. And yeah, Karen, and I wonder, like, with the not talking, what's actually possible with that? Because sometimes I think those things that are our biggest kind of stumbling blocks are also our biggest strengths. And we just have to find our way forward, you know, because it's like, if you do it the way everyone else does it, it may not work for you. But if you do it the way that works for you, all of a sudden there's magic, you know. And for me, like, I love having these Facebook conversations because there's always just something always comes out of them that I can always sense the little ripples of magic that go out from them. So it's like finding the ways that you can honor yourself in the creation, in the choosing, in the expressing, you know, in the adventures that you choose, so that more becomes possible, basically, and that a greater future becomes possible, because ultimately that's what we'd all like. Like, I don't think I've ever met anyone who wants a future that is the same or worse than what they've already got. And if they do think that's what they want, then usually it's because they've been so battered about by life that they don't think there's any other possibility. It's not actually what they want, it's that they don't believe there's another possibility. And so what I'm talking about today really is an exercise in discovering that there's so many more possibilities than what you imagined, and every single choice will take you towards them. All right, that was a very long one. Thank you so much for coming to play with me today. And if you want to play with Glow Wild, it is at creativealchemy.com/glow. And there's lots of glowing going on. We're going to have 6 months of adventures. And yeah, and I'll probably do another Facebook Live soon. I'm really feeling it to do a lot more of them, actually. Just seems like there's some conversations that need to be had. So yeah, there you go. All right. Thank you, beautiful people. I'm so grateful for you all for coming to play. And if you want to share it with anyone, feel free, because I feel like this is a conversation that so many people need to actually have a sense of in their own life, because it will actually create greater for everybody. Yeah. All right. Thanks. See you later.